thank you for anyone who was already here joining us. And I know that some people have already reached out and said that they're going to watch the recording later. So thank you for all of you as well. And thank you for Daddy for being here on my first Friday. So I would like to introduce Dr. Richard Krebs, my first guest. Big exhale. So Dr. Krebs was born and raised in Baltimore. He went to City College, which was always confusing to me. It's actually a high school. And then went to Gettysburg College for college. You majored in philosophy,
right?
Correct. And then he was awarded a Rockefeller Scholarship and a University of Chicago Scholarship to attend the Divinity School at the University of Chicago. He transferred out of the Divinity School after a year and moved to the Department of Human Development to pursue his PhD and become a clinical psychologist. There's Saida and Kathy. Hi, ladies. It's the Yoga Girls. Good to see you. So he and my mom, who met in high school and started dating in high school, married in 1961 and lived together in Chicago until his PhD was complete and my sister was born in 1967. They moved back to Baltimore to be near extended family. Dr. Krebs, who I call Pop or sometimes Dad, Poppy if I'm feeling playful, then worked at Sinai Hospital and eventually became Associate Chief of Psychiatry there. He toyed briefly with going to medical school.
Very briefly.
But instead went back to Divinity School, where he spent his college years at Gettysburg. When I was growing up, he always had at least 2 part-time jobs. He built his own private practice here in Westminster, right down the street from the house that we're in right now. And served as interim pastors at multiple churches. He worked at Springfield Hospital, taught classes at a variety of places, including Towson, Gettysburg
College and Gettysburg Seminary.
Okay.
Carroll Community College.
Oh, yes, I remember. My younger brother and I were subjects in that class.
That was fun.
And then McDaniel, maybe when it was still Western Maryland.
Still Western Maryland.
In their gerontology program. So lots of jobs. His last job, he finished his career as full-time pastor at Grace Lutheran Church. During that career, he wrote 4 books and several papers, many papers, published in professional journals and also in popular magazines. He was a guest speaker at TEDx Baltimore, which was run by my husband a few years ago. Now he's fully retired, knocking on the door of 82. I'm sure you don't mind me sharing your age.
No.
He's full-time grandfather, full-time friend, and a mentor to his kids, and maybe a friend or two that you play the mentor role. So I'm honored and privileged to have you here as my first guest on First Friday.
Thank you.
So February is Heart Month, and I asked my dad to be my first guest, initially thinking that he was going to talk about one of his books called Creative Conflict, because he and my mom especially were really good role models of a healthy relationship and how to work through conflicts. But as we talked over the week, it kind of evolved, and we still thought, well, there's many matters of the heart. And so tonight we're going to talk about love and meditation and caregiver stress and letting go. So this group, I don't know if you actually know the history of it.
No.
So it started May 27th of 2019. So almost 2 months after Mom, I was going to say Bubba, because once she became a grandmother, she became Bubba. Her first grandchild couldn't say Barbara. So she became Barbara. But she died April 1st of 2019. And it was actually a clean beauty company that I was connected to, who plays a strong emphasis on education, and said, start a group to educate on health. I said, okay. I called it Why is Bigger Than What, because I didn't know what I was doing at all. But I knew why I was doing it. I knew that Mom had spent years, decades really, trying to kind of figure out her health issues. And I wanted to create a space where other people who either had a concern for dementia or had an autoimmune disease could just come and join forces and share ideas. And thanks to your support, my what has become more clear.
Good.
And my background's in occupational therapy. I'm a yoga teacher, but I added health coach, and then I still thought that I was getting close to being able to really help people, but I didn't quite have it. And you were instrumental in helping me go through the functional medicine training. And now I feel like
All the pieces.
all the pieces. Yeah. So I have the what, and now the name changed. So now the name of the group is Brain Wellness and Dementia Prevention. So I'm going to stop talking and start asking you some questions.
Okay.
So first, I just want to kind of publicly thank you again for being so instrumental in supporting me throughout life, but really helping me pursue what's in my heart and what I'm passionate about. You've been a physical support, a financial support, a sounding board. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to try not to cry. Well, I can't promise. I should have had tissues nearby.
I've got a handkerchief.
Okay. So you have been an excellent example on how to live from the heart, how to follow your heart, from an emotional standpoint, but also from a health and physical standpoint. It wasn't until I was an adult that I really appreciated your many hours of meditation and how beneficial that is. I'm sure it was in the back of my mind somewhere when I got into yoga.
Probably.
So we're going to talk about meditation today.
Okay.
But sure, you're just an example of doing all the things that we're supposed to do to increase our health span. Really taking care of our heart, like I said, physically and emotionally. I have multiple people have said to me, I saw your dad today. He was walking with the bag in his hand. I'm like, yes, he walks to the grocery store and carries his groceries back. He walks to the library and carries his books back. You've always incorporated the physical, not exercise, because you don't like exercise, but the physical activity into your daily life. So I said I was going to stop talking, and I haven't yet. So I guess the first question, since love was first on the list, let's start there. So in matters of love, let's start with Mom.
It's a very good place to start.
Yeah, she's the inspiration for this group, and your love is why I'm here.
Right.
So whatever you want to say.
I fell in love with your mom because we could be quiet together. I started dating when I was 12, and we didn't meet until I was 17. So I'd been dating for a long time. Barbara had just started to date. She was 15. Without my knowing it, she was actually dating two other guys at the same time she was dating me. Uh, but I'd always ask her out as we finished the date. And so I was getting in first, and I didn't know I had any competition. Uh, but what I really enjoyed about her was literally we could be quiet together and comfortably quiet. And that was the first time that it ever happened for me. I dated a lot of girls. One of them even thought about maybe this is the one. But Bubba was the first person, not just the first girl, that I could just be completely at ease and not say anything. And I think I fell in love with her before she fell in love with me. I asked her to go steady on the romantic senior boat ride. And I told her not to give me an answer, to think about it. And she told me a long time later that it was a good thing that I did it that way, because she probably would have said no. So she thought about it and thought, well, I've never gone steady with anybody, and he's going off to college, so probably we'll break up when he goes off to college. But what I did was to come home every weekend from Gettysburg to see her. She was still a senior in high school. And I think during that time, as I kept making my pilgrimage back to see her, she fell in love with me too. And when I asked her to go steady, in my mind, I was really asking her to marry me. I knew I'd found the woman I wanted to spend my life with. But as I said, at the time, she was only 15. I guess by then she had turned 16. But she was young and relatively inexperienced, but very pretty and attracting a lot of attention. But my persistence paid off. And so we continued to date through our years of college. I took a year off from college. I ran out of money. And so we had a year with my working. And so we got to see each other much more frequently, almost every day. Bought a car together. Before we actually got engaged, I'd given her my fraternity pin, but we weren't engaged yet. But she needed a car to go to school. And her parents didn't give her a car. They gave her brothers cars later, but they didn't give Bubba a car. So she and I pooled our money, bought a car. It turned out to be a terrible car, a Fiat 600. But it got her back and forth to school, and also got her to write a couple of essays over the adventures she had with it. And then later on, at the end of my working year, we bought a Volkswagen Bug, and that was much more reliable. But we knew we wanted to get married. There was no question in our minds. And even when I went off to the divinity school at the University of Chicago, I'm sure there were people that thought, oh, that's going to end it. They won't see each other. But this time I didn't get home weekends, but I got home once a month because my dad had worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad. He got me a free pass. So I'd get on the train Friday night, sit up in the car, get into Baltimore early Saturday morning. Bubba will be waiting for me at the station with another joyful reunion. And we did that every month. And finally decided we were going to get married in June when she graduated from college. But by that time, we were both pretty horny because
I knew this was going to come up.
Because we had decided we weren't going to have sex before marriage. And we decided we couldn't wait any longer. So she went to her pastor and said, we want to get married at Christmas rather than in June. And he asked if she was pregnant. He was a jerk. in addition to asking an inappropriate question, he told us we couldn't kiss
At the ceremony.
at the ceremony. And so I just said to Bubba, we're going to kiss. What's he going to do?
Split it up.
So we kissed, and we have a picture somewhere of his standing in the background with a frown. But we kissed and went off to New York for a couple of days on money that I had squeezed out of my 2 fellowships at the University of Chicago, and had a wonderful honeymoon. It was a fairy tale kind of honeymoon.
Yeah.
So yes, we were very much in love. First year we were married was very hard. I was trying to get a scholarship because I wasn't eligible for a scholarship when I changed into Committee on Human Development. Bubba was doing her first year of teaching. We were both working our asses off and had almost no money. If either of us had gotten sick that year, we would have, I don't know what we would have done. We would have gone under because we were paying for my tuition out of her first year teacher's salary. But we didn't care. We'd have a date on Friday evening, walk a mile to get a chocolate ice cream cone. That was our date. And most of the rest of the time we were just working hard, but we were a young, happy couple in love. And then after I finished up at the University of Chicago, we decided we really wanted to come back to Baltimore, where we both had extended family. We wanted our kids to grow up with cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and that's what happened.
So a long courtship and
Yes.
A slowly evolving love that became stronger and stronger and stronger. And
Yes,
you had 4 kids,
yes,
and you came back to the area to make sure that we were surrounded by love, and that's what happened.
it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing the love story. But that's just the beginning of it. But we're going to shift topics
Okay.
and talk about meditation, because this has come up many times in our conversations. But when we're talking about the heart, hang tight. There's a story that's going to come later where meditation will pop up again. But can you just share how you got involved with meditation?
Yeah. When I was at Chicago, I had a classmate with whom I had a friendship and a number of parallels. My name's Richard Krebs. His name was Richard Kramer. We were Larry Kohlberg's first 2 graduate students, both expanding his developing ideas on the development of morality in kids. And after we graduated, Dick went down to Duke to teach, and I came to Baltimore to work at Sinai. He lasted there for just a few years and moved to California to go into practice. We had visited together in North Carolina, but I had never been out to California to see him. And I gave him a call one day, just was missing him and wondering how he was. And we weren't 30 minutes or 30 seconds into the phone call when I said, Dick, what's going on with you? Something's changed. He said, well, I've been doing Zen meditation. And at that point, I had finished up 5 years of psychotherapy, had gone as far as I could go with using psychotherapy as a form of growth. And so I got a book on Zen meditation, got about halfway into it, and this isn't going to work for me. Through a long story that I won't go into, I ended up getting involved with transcendental meditation, the kind of McDonald's of meditation. and got my Sanskrit mantra and started meditating 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. Things went along fine for a couple of months. And then I started having some weird experiences. Precognition, taking other people's pain away, physical pain. So I went back to the guy who had taught the course, who had been my mentor, explained what was happening. He said, "Oh, gee, I don't know." I thought, "Oh, shit. What do I do now?" So along the way, I had essentially become an atheist. I had gotten out of the church and religion completely. And I thought, well, Christianity does know something about things like this. Maybe I ought to take some courses at seminary and find out what's going on here. Next thing I knew, I wasn't just trying to find out about meditation and my experience with it. I was committed to going into the ministry. And so I continued to meditate, but instead of using a Sanskrit mantra, I just used different names for God as my focus. And over the years, there were periods where maybe I'd go for several months without meditating, but always came back. And for well over 50 years now, I've been meditating. Since I retired, I meditate a lot more than I did. I have the time to do it, as well as the inclination. It's been a source of, I won't say joy, peace, I guess, would be a more accurate word. At times get insights into important things. From time to time, when I've had an important issue to deal with, I go off on my own into the woods, take a gallon of water in my sleeping bag, and spend a couple of days meditating. And clarity has always come out of those experiences. So it's been an important part of my life.
So connecting, meditation and your heart, how has it impacted your heart physically and emotionally, if you haven't already touched on that?
Okay. Well, about 6-7 years ago, I had what was kind of an emotional perfect storm. Your older brother, Randy, was just starting a really ugly divorce, needed my support. Bubba was going downhill pretty rapidly, needed my support. Her aunt and uncle, Fuzz and Bill, for whom she had been like a daughter, and because they had no children, and she saw herself as their major support, which she could no longer provide as she was going downhill. So that had shifted to me. And we were in Hanover, Bubba and Fuzz and I, getting ready to have lunch, and I passed out. My head just clunked down on the table. I thought I was out for a couple seconds, but later learned through my daughter that it had been more like 2 minutes.
Yeah, Fuzz took me aside and said, "Don't believe him. It wasn't a few seconds. It was a few minutes. It was really scary. Take him to the doctor."
So she did. And we got an evaluation locally with a practitioner who said, "You really need to see a specialist." We went down to Sinai. The cardiologist wanted to put in a pacemaker. He said, you could have one of these while you're driving and kill yourself or somebody else. I was not at all enthusiastic about having a pacemaker put in. So fortunately, he had in practice with him a colleague who was interested in the electrical functioning of the heart and monitoring that, who said to his partner, why don't we put him on a monitor for 10 days and just see if there's any signs of heart damage or irregular heart rhythms or anything. So I came back in at the end of the 10 days. They looked at the monitor, and the man who had suggested it said to his partner, "You owe me $1." Said, his heart's fine. And the doctor who had wanted to put in the implant said, "Well, his heart rate's awfully slow. It's in the 40s." And I said, "Well, I've been meditating for many years. I'm like an athlete in that sense, that my heart is slow, but it's efficient." And so he didn't sound very convinced, but I was really not concerned about my heart anymore at that point. Haven't had any more problems, with the exception of, I don't know how many years ago it was now. More like 5 years ago, maybe, at church one time, something happened.
Oh, I think that was when you had the monitor on.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you were flustered to try to push the button to do a recording, but I think it was the anxiety that had just.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot that. In any case, turns out that both my brothers have had heart attacks. My older brother, Dave, died with heart problems. Also had cancer, but actually died with a heart attack. And my younger brother has also had a heart attack. Now, whether I would have had one if I hadn't been meditating, who knows? But it's at least an interesting coincidence that I haven't had a heart attack, and maybe related to all these years of looking out for my body as well as my soul by meditating. I think probably.
So I'd like to jump back to that time period when you were pretty stressed out.
Very stressed out, right?
Yeah. So mom was in mid to late stage dementia.
Right.
I know you had made a promise to her early in the discovery that this is what it was. It was dementia. That you weren't going to put her in a home. And that was, you love this woman. You were going to see her to the end. And early in her dementia, my family, Mel and the kids, at that time there was two kids, moved in with you to try to be of service in the early stages of dementia. And that proved to not be a good timing. It's not good. Mom was still actually driving at that point, and any offer of help was taken as a criticism, or she was getting a little paranoid, and we actually had to leave to salvage our long history of a really good relationship.
Right.
So, but at that point, later, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many years later, you'd had your fill.
Right.
You were ready for help again. That was before Rob and Jess moved in, I think. So,
Right.
yeah. So when you had that episode in the restaurant, what was your daily existence like at that point?
It was hard. Bubba had started to wander, especially in the evening. We had to put an alarm on the door. I couldn't really trust her around the house. So that it was a constant concern, literally day and night.
You're always on hyper alert.
Right.
What's
right,
going to happen?
Right. And then her physical health deteriorated too. She had a history of urinary tract infections and got one, and was treated with strong antibiotics, which turned out to be worse than the problem itself because she developed C. diff. Had to be hospitalized for that. And things just went downhill to the point where I really couldn't care for her at home anymore. And that was hard for me to admit. So fortunately, you and the rest of the kids had put her name on the list at Homewood. We got her in there. And so I started making daily trips to Homewood.
There was a gap time in there before all of her UTIs, but after you passed out in the restaurant, when I was actually working locally and that job ended.
Right.
And you gave me this gift of saying, hey, I'm totally stressed out. I need a break. You need a job. Could you be your mom's occupational therapist for a few hours a week? And that was really, truly a gift.
Yeah.
And
that was wonderful for all three of us.
yeah. So initially I was concerned because we had already had this struggle relationship wise when I was trying to help her. So I thought, how am I going to help her without angering her?
Right.
But the light bulb went off. You know, she was a teacher. I had a 2.5-year-old. Mom, could you help me teach him his alphabet? Of course. So when you tie into someone's love and joy and passion, it's really, it becomes therapy.
Right.
That was easy. That was, well, it's A day. Let's go to Boggers and pick some apples. Okay, let's go. I didn't have to convince her, let's go do some exercise or let's play some brain games, because she would not have taken to that at all.
No,
but because we could do it with Kai, with her grandson, it suddenly became, like you said, good for everyone involved. Good for mom, good for me, good for Kai. You got a long break where you could just exhale and leave the house and go do something else.
Right.
So I don't know if there's anybody in this group now who is where we were at that point. So finding what works for the person in that stage of dementia is really important. I mean, and part of the reason why I started this group, because I thought, wow, I mean, I had an OT background. You were a clinical psychologist.
And we still had.
Yeah, it was still really hard for us.
Right.
So what do people do if they don't have the help experience? I mean, I bumped into my 5th grade teacher at the Mistletoe Mart, and she was still teaching and had to sleep at the top of the stairs every night to prevent her husband from leaving the bedroom and wandering out the front door.
She slept on the floor, didn't she?
On the floor for a year.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, my heart goes out to all those people in that situation. So let me say hi to the people that showed up. So hi, Karen. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Zara. Oh, all my therapy people. So first we got the yoga people, then the therapy people. Chrysola, awesome. It's so good to see you. I can't really see you, but I know you're here. Thank you for being here. So we talked about falling in love, and we talked about meditation and the role that it played, and how that helped your heart. We touched on caregiver stress and the need to really build your team around you. That you can't handle it all by yourself.
No.
We had a really good physical therapist. My younger brother and his wife moved in. I mean, we were really lucky because Rob and Jess moved in. We moved up the street. One time when she wandered out, it was a summertime. You guys were listening to a Oriole game, and you had fallen asleep, and she walked out the front door and walked across the street to the neighbors, and they called me and said, your mom is at our house, and she's saying that she has to get home, and she needs keys to the car. So I rushed down the street. You were asleep in the chair. Fortunately, we had great neighbors, and that all played out well. But that was when we bought the alarm to the door.
Right.
But she was sharper than we thought she was, because sometimes she would move that alarm. Mm-hmm.
Sneak out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots of support out there. Reach out for help. You can't do it on your own.
Absolutely
Can't do
not.
it on your own.
Absolutely not.
So our final topic is love and letting go. So the hard part.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I'm a pastor as well as a psychologist. And Jesus makes the comment that when two people get married, they become one flesh. And I had always seen that as a lovely metaphor until in the final stages of Barbara's dementia, when it was clear that she just wasn't going to be around much longer. I started letting go. It wasn't a choice, it just was happening. And I told Laurel earlier, the metaphor, or what I thought was a metaphor, is far more than that. There were times when, as I realized that I was losing Barbara to dementia and ultimately to death, it felt like pieces of me were just literally being ripped out. It was agonizing. And the fact that I loved her made that possible. It's the other end of the relationship, when the love brings you together, but it also rips you to shreds as it has to come apart. And during that time, my continuing meditation and my continuing looking to children and grandchildren and friends was crucial. And then I naively thought that since I had done all this grieving before she died, that I wouldn't have much to do afterward. I was very wrong. She's been gone. It'll be 2 years, April 1st. And there are still times, and I suspect there will always be times when the pain is just almost intolerable. There's a song that I found on YouTube that really speaks to me. It's called "I'm Ready to Go Home," and I understand the words of St. Paul when he talks about the fact that he'd rather be with Christ, but he knows that he's still needed here. I'd rather be with Barbara, but I know that I'm still needed here. And so love both gives health and healing and joy and peace, but it also gives pain. And that's the reality. That's the way it is. You get born with pain. you die not only with your own pain, but in giving pain to others. It's just part of the circle. But not one I would change. Worth the cost, worth the price. And I remember when I was in therapy, I was ultimately in therapy with 2 therapists, but my first therapist and I'd probably been working with her for about 1.5 years at that point, while I was still at the University of Chicago. And I don't remember why the topic came up, but I was talking about some of the students at the university and the fact that they just seemed to kind of be gliding along and everything. And we got into a pretty deep conversation. It wasn't a typical therapy conversation, an interchange, where we reflected on the fact that in order to find depth, in order to be a deep person, you have to hurt. You have to have experiences of pain. And so I won't say I welcome pain for myself or for my children or grandchildren or friends. But there is definitely a positive side to pain. A melting of hardness and a gentleness that I think only comes when you suffered. And I think for me, the example of Christ and his suffering has to do with the reality that when you open yourself up to love, and I do believe that God is love, that part of what comes in is pain. Part of what comes in is suffering, not just your own, and even ultimately not primarily your own, but other people's as well. But it's all worth it.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today, and thanks for being my daddy. And thanks for sharing your love.
Thanks for being my daughter.
Thanks for joining us. Happy Friday.
Bye-bye.